As we saw in the last presentation, is that we're going to have to come to terms with each other because, especially Aristotle, as I said, he had some awesome things to say, but it didn't always mesh quite exactly with what the Christian teachings were saying, right? And so a quick reminder about the zeitgeist that was going on here in the Dark Ages, and the zeitgeist was just one thing. Christianity dominated. Okay? There was no there was no good central governments. There was no people that lived on the land. I still remember, in fact, a very cute example from what was it, Monty Python, the Holy Grail. Anybody? Anybody? And so, and right, of course, it's Arthur. But anyway, he's going through, and he says, "I'm king of the Britons," and this peasant goes, "King of the who?" He's king of the Britons. "Who are the Britons?" says the peasant. He goes, "Well, you're a Briton." And then it goes on and on and on. And the point is silly, but the point is true, that this peasant didn't really know or care what country he was in. What did he give a crap, right? He's just trying to survive. He's just trying to make it from one day to the next. He had no hope in his life. He had no future. There's no reason to think that your kids will ever be any better than you. And yet, meanwhile, in this day and age, you're getting Christianity shoved down your throat, but you don't have the ability to even understand what the heck it is, okay? You don't understand the rules. So you go there and you believe it and you accept it and you have faith. Yeah, but wait, don't you dare ask that question what it is. Okay, you just accept it. Briefly, as we had said, when Rome collapsed, much of the early philosophy had been disseminated, brought out, brought to the Arabic universities, and we found that in the Middle East, of course, what happened was born in the year 570, and within 100 years after he died, Islam, the influence that covered, the Islamic Caliphate, if you will, was larger than the Roman Empire at its peak within 100 years. It was pretty impressive, okay? Meanwhile, they translated Aristotle, and here's the deal, that the Muslims translated Aristotle, and just like we're going to come with the Christians, not everything Aristotle had to say meshed well with what they were believing, okay? And so they modified Aristotle a little bit. And so when the Christians found Aristotle, brought it back and said, okay, this is awesome, this is ours, we made it, this is our Western tradition, but they didn't have the original Aristotle, what the Muslims had translated and modified it into. So they had to take what they found and try to pull Aristotle out, remove the Islamic influence, and leave the core Aristotle. Okay, and in and of itself, that was quite a task. So when Aristotle's work was first encountered, it was like, this is great. And then they found some inconsistencies, and they said, okay, this isn't right. Okay? And so Scholasticism was this attempt to synthesize Aristotle's philosophy with Christian teaching. Okay? And so, hello? Hey, wait, that is my next one. And so, in this era of Scholasticism, we had a couple of early Christian thinkers. The things just are somewhat similar, but here we go. Here, Peter Lombard. Peter Lombard, again, he did a lot of things, and I'm going to take Peter Lombard, one slide, but you know what? He says there's 3 ways to learn about God: faith, reason, and by studying God's works, okay? Because these are all God gave, God through faith, because that's what the Christian church has been teaching all through the Middle Ages. You can use your rationality and reason to learn about God. Why? Because God gave it to you. He had to give it to reason. And third, you can study the physical world because this is physical evidence of God's work, okay? It's just 3 ways of knowing God, okay? In perspective. Peter Abelard, again, a very important person in the history of Christianity, but I'll bring it straight down. And I'll keep it. he creates these techniques, etc., etc., but essentially here's what he says, okay? God exists, period. So, if God exists, it doesn't matter how you try to study God. You should come to the same results every time because I already know the end. God exists. And so his essential point was that it doesn't matter how you study because the truth is the truth. Or no matter what method you use to study, you should always come to that truth.
Albertus Magnus is an interesting character. He took over, and he was the one that really did the work to remove the Arabic and the Jewish influences that had gotten into it, and to try to present the Aristotle. And he followed Aristotle greatly, and he thought it's time to look at nature, okay? Because that's how you do. You learn through observation. You observe, you observe, you observe, as we had learned in Aristotle in that early presentation, which was Plato is to rationalism as Aristotle is to empiricism. In other words, St. Albertus Magnus decided that he would fall back on the empiricism that Aristotle had emphasized in the first place. But of all of the early Christian philosophers, I'm not sure, all of the early Christian teachers or leaders, St. Thomas Aquinas is probably the most influential. He's the one that really took Aristotle and meshed it. He truly is the one that is responsible for this scholasticism thing. He's the one that really put it two together. Okay, and he did it in such a way that Aristotle's writings became almost as sacred as the Bible. So it was to a point here where during these ages, during these times, a judge or something like that on his bench would have two books. One book is the Bible, number two, Aristotle. Fact 1, fact 2. I mean, these are going to be. Aristotle is going to become so rigidly followed, just like the Bible was rigidly followed. I mean, you don't question the Bible, right? I mean, the Bible is the Bible. And Aristotle is going to be brought up at this point in history, brought up to the same level of belief as people had in the Bible. You don't question Aristotle, okay? All answers can be found in Aristotle or the Bible. That's it. That is faith and reason, done. Or faith and empiricism. Okay, and so reason and faith should not be incompatible with each other. And again, I mean, what does St. Thomas Aquinas say? The same essential idea as earlier. I mean, God equals truths. Therefore, you want through rationality, go for it. You want to know God through faith? Feel free. It doesn't matter ultimately because God is God and God is truth. It doesn't matter how you study God. And so at this point in the Renaissance, we had two different types of people. Again, believers and non-believers, all right? Philosophy's job was to serve religion. I mean, Aristotle was truth, but I mean, it still was it still was a level below the Bible. That is, the reason that they accepted Aristotle was because they thought it supported the Bible, okay? And so here's this notion that so you've got this. Aristotle and the Bible are on equal footing. But here's what's happening. Here we got the guy that makes the Renaissance possible. Because the Renaissance still isn't happening. We're still in what we would call the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages. Remember, we call them the Dark Ages because, the Catholic Church had made sure that nobody had any other thoughts except what the Catholic Church said, okay? And so this Dark Ages were there, and the Renaissance, of course, is going to be an enlightenment or something like that. And how is it possible? It's this guy. I know, you're like, this dude, I love the beard and everything, but who is this guy, okay? That, my friends, is Johannes Gutenberg. Johannes Gutenberg, who invented the first movable type so that you could print. This made possible something very, very... The most important thing this made possible was that you, the average peasant living at this time, had the possibility to own your own Bible. You did not just have to accept as truth the thing that is shoved in your face. Instead, here it is. You accept it. It can be yours. Okay? Move in the next time and start talking more about the humanism that I thought I was going to move into. To move into the humanism in the next present and talk about how the ability for you, your own Bible, starts to make you into an individual person that matters. Next time.